Two of my biggest questions about Help Wanted 2 are who are we playing as, and who or what is talking to us through Mystic Hippo during the game. Without knowing this information, it's really difficult to figure out why this game is significant at all. And today I wanted to offer you my answer to these two questions. So to begin, Help Wanted 2 shifts its focus. Instead of making fun of the tragedies of the past like Help Wanted 1, this game pushes us into a Fazbear employee role, encouraging us to join the Fazbear team. So for the most part, we take on virtual Fazbear employee tasks to determine which Fazbear job is best suited for us. This seems innocent enough for Fazbear, but I think there's something more going on here that I didn't pick up on at first. To quickly give a bit of background on Help Wanted 2, the main hub area this game takes place in is under the Mega Pizzaplex that was introduced to us in Security Breach. And as for the mini-games, we're put into several different Fazbear locations. We work various jobs around the Pizzaplex like the daycare and Roxy's salon. We work night shifts in the sister location bunker facing off against multiple animatronics. We're even put into some mini-games that seem to take place at Fall Fest as well. The variety of locations aside, another notable difference in Help Wanted 2 from the first Help Wanted is that we're now being directly talked to by somebody or something. Whereas in Help Wanted 1, we kind of had to go around finding tapes from Tape Girl to truly learn anything about what was actually happening. The first VR FNAF game began with the introduction of Glitchtrap, and Help Wanted 2 ended with his demise, at least in the secret ending. So at this point in the story, Glitchtrap has lost his hold over the Pizzaplex, but he's still in this VR experience trying to gain power once more. In the secret ending of the game, when we take the place of the princess in Princess Quest IV, we help to end this Glitchtrap madness once and for all. And this was confirmed by Steel Wool in the interview they had with John FNAF to be the last we see of Glitchtrap, so he's gone. And that makes Five Nights at Freddy's Ruin all the more interesting to me. But I am getting a bit sidetracked, so let's get back to Help Wanted 2. Alright, so let's begin. Who is talking to us in this game, and why? So I want to present the idea today that F10 is the one speaking to us. So let's talk about Mystic Hippo a little bit. We know Mystic Hippo is from around the same time period as F10 is. We even see a poster of them in Secret of the Mimic. It's strange to use a character from this time period if they aren't relevant at all to the character speaking. I want to quickly bring up the visual appearance of this hippo as well, quickly noting that she's wearing a top covered in stars and moons, and since imagery is greatly important to Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole, I can't help but be reminded of certain visuals from Secret of the Mimic, such as the storytime area that has stars all over it, as well as the moon being a large part of Moon.EXE. Literally, the game is called Moon.EXE, and as we play through that game, it talks about trying to bring David back, having lines referring to writing his name in the stars and bouncing his ball with the moon. It's a lot of imagery that aligns nicely with this character. But additionally, we have things like the glowing orphan stars that are in the basement with the tiger, and also with the moon that chases us around. And for additional visual information, I'd like to point out that Mrs. Helpful, Mystic Hippo, and Fiona all wear a necklace made of pearls, but I don't want to say more because the colors don't actually match with Mystic Hippo versus the others, and the design is a bit different of the necklace. Lastly, the Mystic Hippo machine also has a Murray Manor logo on it, so I do think that's worth bringing up, but you can only go so far with visual evidence, especially for this kind of evidence that seems a little lacking. But there are many other things about Mystic Hippo that it's time to talk about, and this is when it really started clicking for me. So, Mystic Hippo talks to us very intentionally. Towards the beginning of the game, Mystic Hippo tells us that. But as we progress throughout the game, completing different minigames, it becomes clear that Mystic Hippo is not only curious about us, but wants us to help with something. After we complete enough minigames, we unlock the Faz Wrench, at which point Mystic Hippo tells us,
"You are ready. Use the key to confront the darkness."
we're now able to unlock a door that we couldn't access before, and using this Faz Wrench, we discover that there is a fourth Princess Quest game waiting for us behind the door. We don't have a coin for this particular arcade game just yet though, and so we're unable to play it at this point. This is where things get even more interesting though. So she starts giving us special tasks that are a lot more challenging to figure out and complete. Each of these tasks rewards us with a memory plush. If we collect all of these plushies, we are rewarded with a glitched purple coin, which we can then use to play Princess Quest IV and confront the darkness, as Mystic Hippo has told us earlier. There's something else going on here simultaneously though that's equally important. See, there's another character demanding our attention, and that is this character, this vintage looking Helpy. What's interesting is that this character urges us to open and collect these presents that we unlock as we play through the game. Inside these presents are different Fazbear Transformer toys that seem innocent enough, but once we unlock them all, we earn ourselves a bad ending, realizing too late that we shouldn't have done this, as Glitchtrap steps out and we get torn apart by staff bots. it was all a trick. And we learn in Ruin that Cassie almost suffers a similar fate, thinking she's going to save Gregory, ultimately being tricked by the Mimic instead. Let me quickly mention that as Cassie is progressing through the ruins of the Pizzaplex, she's forced to communicate with a Helpy AI character that's been injected into her head. And at some points throughout the game, this Helpy character visually changes its appearance, and it becomes clear we're talking to a corrupted Helpy that no longer has our best interests in mind. Rather, this Helpy's ultimate goal seems to be pushing us towards helping the Mimic break free, which has led many of us to believe that this may actually be the Mimic talking through this character. I would argue that this Helpy in Help Wanted 2 is also being used by the Mimic, doing its best to trick us, catch us, and end the game. I can't help but notice that this plays out very similarly to Secret of the Mimic, where the Mimic has been trying to catch us the entire game, and if we don't earn F10's trust and complete her tasks, we get a bad ending. We only unlock the secret ending by completing all of F10's more difficult tasks, which is when she truly confides in us and trusting us with the glitched permission. In the same way, Mystic Hippo only presents us with the purple glitched coin once we've completed her tasks, collecting the memory plushies and ignoring the temptation of the gifts that Helpy is offering us. What's genius writing here to me about these gifts that Helpy is trying to persuade us to take is that the Mimic saw Arnold collecting gifts in Secret of the Mimic, and so the Mimic presenting these gifts to our player in Help Wanted 2 is not only literally the Mimic mimicking what it saw Arnold going for in Secret of the Mimic, but since it's seen that Fazbear employees are willing to collect these gifts in the past, it's using that very knowledge against us now to trick us. I don't know, I just thought that was a really neat detail, and I wanted to bring it up. To continue though, essentially F10 is once again testing the player. This is a reoccurring storyline I've noticed in modern FNAF games. Heck, even the arcade conspiracist notes that while playing Princess Quest and trying to complete it, that they are being tested and are not yet worthy, that they need to prove themselves to the princess. In the same way, F10 is looking for somebody that is committed to her goal here. And in Help Wanted 2, F10 actually has two goals. Before we destroy Glitchtrap, the first goal is to get rid of Glitchtrap. We're confronting that darkness. Glitchtrap has been removed from Vanessa thanks to Gregory, but Glitchtrap unfortunately is still around, and in order to get rid of him, F10 needs some help. This is essentially the first goal of Help Wanted 2, but the story doesn't end there, does it? Let me remind you that after Glitchtrap's defeat, we received an update for Help Wanted 2. And what happens immediately in the Help Wanted 2 update? Mystic Hippo talks to us again, where she then guides us directly to the tiger plush, which means that we are once again trusted with bringing back her son, because this is truly all that F10 wants. So after a final confrontation with Glitchtrap and his defeat, we're back to F10's true motive, having her son back. But this time it's going to be more difficult. See, the Mimic no longer has a socket to plug into our Faz wrench with the glitched permission. The socket has been removed from the Mimic's endo. The Mimic also seems arguably even angrier than before. If you're confused why I'm saying than before, it's because I think the David Mimic ending of Secret of the Mimic is the canon one, at least partially. I still believe that the secret ending happened and the Mimic was successfully deactivated. I'm not going to break down all that I think happens after 1979 with the Mimic, but I'll bring up a couple of things to keep in mind. I know a lot of the community doesn't feel like the Pizzaplex books are important anymore, but in the books, Fazbear was also able to make an entire wave of Mimic endos, so I would not be surprised if Fazbear does end up with the Mimic endo at some point in the game timeline as well. What happens to the Mimic after 1979 and up until now is anybody's guess, but it seems like there was possibly a time period where it wasn't violent once again. To offer you a few ideas of why I think that this note we find in Security Breach talking about a creepy bot is a Fazbear employee talking about the Mimic. If the Mimic is the creepy bot, it's interesting that people know about it, and as of the time that this message was written, nobody was concerned about it killing them. It seems it was even tricked into mimicking different tasks for an employee, very similarly to how the Mimic was programmed to do tasks in the books. I would also bring up the fact that by the time of Security Breach, we find a room full of sticky notes that seem to be drawn and written by either a young child or a young robot, and I personally would argue that these are written by the Mimic. Sticky notes that say things like, "This is my home," and other binary code and such being written on these notes, immediately pulls my mind back to the Secret of the Mimic game, where we find binary notes that were sent to Edwin that are concerned about whether or not the Murray house is going to be lost. Specifically, one of these notes says, "Edwin, are we losing our home? I don't understand. Wasn't I good enough?" At the moment, I believe this note was written by M2, as we overhear Edwin in a recording at the manor confiding that he was working on M2, and he just wanted to be sure that it was ready before he released it. So finding sticky notes that show great attachment to this place being my home, to me signifies that M2 wrote these sticky notes as well, while it was learning once again how to write and draw. And if David is still possessing the endo in some way, the pictures and other drawings are very important as well. Both the Silver Eyes trilogy and the FNAF movies emphasize the importance of pictures, And we know David drew a ton of pictures in Secret of the Mimic as well. See, to me this all just connects rather seamlessly. But I do have a few more quick ideas I want to bring up about why I think the secret ending happened in Secret of the Mimic. One is that the Endos in Security Breach are able to crawl on the walls, and I can't help but think that they learned this from the Mimic program, as we see the Mimic able to crawl on walls in Secret of the Mimic. And I don't know how Fazbear would have been able to get this Endo or the blueprints without Arnold's help. Lastly, I'm fully convinced that Murray's Manor is somewhat underneath the Pizzaplex, or at least that the Pizzaplex has literally built itself over and through what the manor used to be. There are just too many things left over from Murray's Manor, areas that seem immensely similar, the huge elevator that goes under the stage, the Murray costumes even being kept where the Mimic is trapped and ruins showing up, DJ Music Man being here, the list goes on to be completely honest. But all of that is somewhat speculation. None of it is necessarily concrete. There are truly an infinite amount of ideas on what became of the Mimic after 1979. That whole idea is simply my speculation, but I wanted to offer you something at least. Now though, let's get back to Help Wanted 2 again. So at this point you're probably wondering, okay Vrar, so you think Mystic Hippo is F10, then who are we ourselves playing as in the game? And my answer to that is that we're playing as Arnold. See, it's not just that F10 trusted Arnold with the glitched permission in Secret of the Mimic, she trusts our player again here. There's a lot more to unpack though, because she could be trusting somebody new. First, in Arnold's van in Secret of the Mimic, he has a deck of playing cards. I wouldn't call it out if we didn't see these same cards being used by Mystic Hippo, almost as if she knows they're relevant to us. She also asks us oddly specific questions like,
Remember.
if this is just some random employee, why would F10 ask such a question? Remember what? But if this is Arnold, there is definitely something that he's gonna remember, because he's done something like this before. This explains why when we unlock the Faz Wrench, Mystic Hippo says,
Use the key to confront the darkness. The key is familiar to you.
and the reason she says this is because we've used a key like this before. A very similar key called the Data Diver. The Faz Wrench works and looks incredibly similar to the Data Diver, and that's assuming that it's not literally just a modernized Data Diver itself. To me, it's very possible this actually is capable of functioning like a Data Diver does. After all, we even see Cassie use a Faz Wrench to reboot Sun and Moon. But that's not all we have here to connect Arnold to Help Wanted 2. Mystic Hippo even mirrors F10's lines that she first tells Arnold when he meets her face to face. In Secret of the Mimic, she tells him,
"You have questions, but there is no time."
and now here, Mystic Hippo says,
I sense you have a great many questions.
and
You seek answers.
now, this could just be how F10 talks to people in general, but let's keep going here. In my previous video, I discussed how in Secret of the Mimic, F10 is trying to see Arnold for who he really is, to determine if she can trust him with the glitched permission to bring her son back. And we're seeing this behavior again here. Mystic Hippo literally asks us,
Why are you here?
and this sounds so similar to F10 questioning Arnold in Secret of the Mimic with lines like,
Arnold, why? Why would you come down here?
but maybe more interesting than these vague questions are statements like,
She needs you.
F10 wouldn't just say this to anyone. A Fazbear employee would have to know who she even is. And if we're playing as Arnold, then he would definitely know who she is, and it's unlikely that anyone else necessarily would, which would make such a specific statement both out of place and confusing if she's just saying this to anyone. But I just realized that I didn't actually explain who she is in this context. So I'm referring to the princess here. And for this theory, I am actually referring to the princess as Fiona. I have a whole video going over that whole concept though, and so I'll link it down below too in case you're confused. Anyway, part of my reasoning for saying that it's the princess is that when Mystic Hippo tells us that she needs you, once we actually get into Princess Quest 4, we literally have the princess come up to us entrusting us with the sword. We're the one that the princess needs. We confront the darkness now. Princess Quest 3 was not the end of the story. Before I continue, I want to share one last visual piece of evidence that I think is really helpful, especially if you're skeptical about the Fiona, F10, and Princess Quest connection. So just quickly watch the visual of the glitched permission being given to Arnold. And then, watch this visual as we enter Princess Quest 4 in virtual reality. And let's just watch that beginning part one more time before we move on. It's really interesting how that little square glitch just like zooms into the screen. Alright, let's move on. There's another question that gets asked a lot in Help Wanted 2, and it's driven me crazy since the game first released. So I think one of the most interesting parts of this entire theory is that when Secret of the Mimic was released, there was a lot of disappointment that we were playing as a completely random Fazbear technician that hadn't been established before. But did you ever wonder why the animatronics in Help Wanted 2 continuously ask us this question?
What makes you so special?
What makes you so special?
What makes you so special?
What makes you so special? I find it interesting how all three of these characters ask the question in a different tone. The daycare attendant sounds almost jealous, Circus Baby sounds genuinely curious, and Mystic Hippo sounds like she's asking us something that she already knows the answer to. To most of these animatronic characters, we're just another typical Fazbear employee. But with Secret of the Mimic's story behind us, we know the truth. We are not a typical Fazbear employee. Arnold is different, because Arnold knows the secret of the Mimic. Against all odds, Arnold is the one technician who survived, completed F10's tasks, and brought her son back. Arnold is the one F10 can count on, and here he is again, helping her defeat Glitchtrap. And after Glitchtrap is defeated, it's safe for F10 to once again entrust us with the White Tiger plush to bring back her son. Now you probably have questions, so do I. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll get all of them answered until we get either a Fall Fest game or a continuation of Cassie's story. There are more connections we can make tying Arnold to this, but honestly I have enough here that I want to make that idea its own video. I hope that I've given you enough to think about though, because if either of these characters are who I think they are, it changes a lot about the story and what we thought we knew about other characters in the story. For me, it also changes the direction that I think the story is trying to go. But what do you think? Is this another wild Vrar take? I've got a lot of those. Anyway, thank you for being here and trusting me with your time. If you enjoy my content, feel free to let me know in the comments. Leave a like, drop a sub. It all helps a bunch. That's all for now. Hopefully catch up with everyone later. Bye!